thanks for having me. I'm very happy to come back here at the LSE. I spent 6 months last year visiting Professor Misato Sato and Aurélien Sausset at the Grand Slam Institute, and this is partly the result of these 6 months. So this is my job market paper, Wild for Change, Clean Technology Adoption and Labor Market Transitions. The starting point of this research is the fear that the energy transition will destroy jobs, have tremendous consequences for workers, especially blue-collar workers and those with occupational specific skills. And you have one example on the left-hand side of the slide. This is the last blast furnace that was closed in Port Talbot in Wales in 2024. And of course, that kind of phase out of a very energy-intensive plant creates massive distortions for local communities. Yet there is another side of the story, which is often called the green job story, where you see this type of arguments used to promote energy transition policies. Maybe we can create some good jobs, some new green jobs that would alleviate the negative consequences of the energy transition for blue-collar workers. So this is taken from the press coverage of the IRA in the States, where basically PV installations skyrocketed, and of course you need blue-collar workers on the ground to install those PVs. These are low-skilled people that can then benefit from the energy transition. So you have this two-sided story, and actually there is a missing thing in between, which is what happens within firms, and especially within small and medium enterprises. Incumbent firms that are already providing goods and services today, we will still need the same goods and services tomorrow. We just need that with cleaner technologies. This matters a lot, this greening of incumbent firms and workers, precisely because this is taken from projections taken from the OECD report. 1/4 of all jobs will be changed, affected by net zero policies. We need reskilling policies, green reskilling policies. Otherwise, we cannot have a just transition where we only embark, we actually want to embark all workers, not only workers benefiting from new green jobs. And we know that we have strong policy commitments towards green reskilling. We have, for instance, at the EU level, this Just Transition Fund, which committed 18 billion euros towards green reskilling, yet we crucially lack ex post causal evidence on the effect of adopting clean energy transition at the establishment level, not transitioning workers from brown to green sectors, but really greening existing brown sectors. So that's the research question of the paper. How does clean energy technology adoption affect worker earnings and career trajectories? What I do in the paper, I first provide the first ex post estimates of workers' transition costs from the decarbonization of French heating small and medium enterprises. That's the empirical analysis. I find that decarbonization yields major within-firm labor relocation. What is it? It's basically more hires, but also more layoffs, more separations. So there is a within firm, even within establishment reallocation. With maybe a story about potential losers and winners of the transition. And then I take the worker perspective, and I find that actually when we take this perspective at the worker level, workers only incur very short-run costs, and they actually adjust through two main margins. The first one being expanded hours. They need to work more, basically because they need to reskill on the job. And the second margin of adjustment is that some workers might change employer. They might be either poached or just move to another employer if the skill gap is small enough for them, and this allows them to secure higher hourly wages. So that's actually also beneficial for them. I contribute to mostly two main strands of the literature with this paper. The first one being the effect of environmental regulations on labor markets. We already know that those regulations imply major welfare losses for workers, especially those blue-collar workers endowed with occupation-specific skills. And on top of that, we know also that with very recent evidence, we don't really move people from brown to green. This almost never happens. Yet little is known on worker adjustment costs happening within firms when this firm is adopting the new technology. This is very rarely observed, actually. An employer doesn't have any incentive to flag, hey, I'm adopting this new green technology, except when you have a policy that is helping, subsidizing, for instance, the adoption at the establishment level. And so that's how I complement. And the second strand is, of course, related to this this literature on the effect of technical change and the skill bias of technical change. We have a lot of evidence for general purpose technologies, such as automation and even AI at the frontier of this literature. But we also have a strand on green technologies. What's the effect on green technologies? And here it's very important that we get in actual estimates for each and every technology, because there's no reason why green technology should be either labor augmenting or labor saving, precisely because these technologies are not triggered by the aim to improve productivity, to save labor. These kind of technologies are driven by the aim to decarbonize, and therefore maybe it's labor augmenting, maybe it's labor saving, and therefore the consequences for the labor market are unknown, and we need specific estimates for each and every technology. So that's what I do here. For one type of technology, I'm focusing on the heating sector, and more precisely on the decarbonization of heating. Why? Because heat pumps is the central technology for the decarbonization of heating. You know, here I don't need to explain to this crowd of environmental economists that heating is a big chunk of our emissions. And this new technology is super important, but in my empirical strategy, I'm going to look at one country, France, where we have a lot of, the starting point of the research is 2018, we have a lot of small and medium enterprises active on the market to install heating devices, heating equipment, yet only 5% of those firms were able to install this new technology that we need, heat pumps. So that's a very interesting setup. And on top of that, I know that the switch from installing a fossil boiler to installing a heat pump requires a lot of different adjustments in terms of skill. You have technical skills. For instance, you need to compute a coefficient of performance. You also need to update your regulatory knowledge. You need the F-gas certificate because you're manipulating refrigerant gases. And finally, you need to update your customer communication. You've been blaming electric heating for decades, and now you're promoting the use of heat pumps. So this is quite a shift. In terms of shock, because this is actually an applied paper, and I'm looking at, I need a shock at some point. The shock is a subsidy shock. You see the green line here is for heat pumps, and the brown one for fossil gas boilers. So this, on the left-hand side, is the total amount in subsidy that you could get for the installation of a heat pump or gas boilers on the demand side of the market, of the product market. So households get a subsidy. They are subsidized by the government. And in 2019, you have a sharp increase, plus 2,500 euros in subsidies for the installation of a heat pump. On the right-hand side, you see the effect for the out-of-pocket costs. So you see a decrease for heat pumps, yet natural gas boilers were always more interesting for people who could afford to install a gas boiler. Keep in mind that you actually need to be able to connect to the network if you want to buy a gas boiler. So it's not everyone that could benefit from this 4,000 euro price. Yes, question?
Sorry, question on the previous slide, those 3 steps, approximately like how many months do you think it would take somebody to go through the training for that?
So the thing is, this is happening on the job. So we don't really know, except that I will show some results about this. Yes?
Just to set the expectations straight, this is not the decarbonization of the firm, but the technological progress and then shift in.
This is true. This is true. It's the adoption. The adoption of the technology is still on the firm side, because you need to change everything that you know about gas networks and so on. And you also need some knowledge about how an electric network works at the on the home level, because of course you are plugging something that's a very big appliance.
So the actual decarbonization plays out at the household level.
Decarbonization is at the household level, but the skill gap is on the firm side. That's true. Yes.
Could you explain why the focus of the project and the policies on SMEs for small polluters in the end?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Could you explain why the focus of the project and the policies on SMEs for, in the end, small polluters in the economy?
I mean, these are small and medium enterprises by design. This is how it works, because these are local installers. Then the focus of the policy is it's not on SMEs. It's, I mean, maybe you're talking about the very first policy I was mentioning, this one. This one is indeed dedicated to SMEs because we know that most firms are SMEs. That's how it works. Okay, so now turning to the supplier side. So I'm looking at the response on the supplier side, the installer side. Two things to mention. First one, energy efficiency investments are credence goods. Basically, there is a fundamental trust component in it. And because of this trust component that was missing in 2015, I think the French government created this certificate at the firm level. This is a quality certificate, which is called the Recognized Environmental Guarantor Certificate. And this is super useful because you have one per installation type. So you have one for heat pumps. This allows me to pinpoint which firm decides to invest, to start installing heat pumps instead of installing natural gas boilers. And on top of that, this certificate is mandatory if you want to benefit from this. So basically, this is a very good proxy for technology adoption at the firm level, and I will prove that in a minute. This is the cumulative adoption curve. So you really see something is happening starting in 2019. And now, equipped with this knowledge, I can show you what kind of data I'm using very quickly. I'm building the universe of heating, ventilation, and air cooling service establishments in France. So I start with the certificate at the firm level. I complete that with the universe of subsidized works, just to show you how this actually affected the share of heat pumps versus natural gas boilers in all activities installation at the firm level. Then I complement that with all other firms that I will use as control firms. And then turning to the labor market questions, I have data on employment policy at the establishment level, entries and exits each and every month for all French firms. Then at the worker level, because I also want to take the worker perspective, this is a standard matched employer-employee data set covering all workers in France at the yearly level. And then I can get labor earnings for each wage earner and the number of hours worked in each year. At the end of the day, I have a universe of 100,000 heating firms. Yes.
Is there some notion of productivity of these workers? In some sense, it depends, I suppose, what their wage structure is. But I'm trying to understand what's the counterfactual. If you're upskilling within the firm, can you see the impact of that on the productivity of the workers relative to bringing someone else in from the sector or transitioning skills for another sector that might be closer to their required skills?
Exactly. And I will only compare workers in treated versus untreated firms within the sector, because I know that there are some trends at the sector level. So this is the way I will play with it. There is a trade-off, of course, between comparability and contamination of the treatment, in a sense. So really,
but you see all the workers, including workers coming in from elsewhere.
Yes.
And you can observe some notion of their productivity, how well suited they are.
I know the hourly wage. I know the labor earnings per year. I know the number of hours worked.
But that's not done on a piece rate or something? That doesn't reflect.
It's a piece rate. Then, so what I was starting to explain, the treated firms and also workers are firms and their workers who get the certificate in 2019, the year where the policy started, the year of the shock. Then the control firms are all firms and their workers active in this industry who never get certified up until the end of the observation period. I'm using this clean, never treated strategy because I really want to exclude those firms who eventually adopted the technology triggered by spillovers, like geographical spillovers, or because they are in a market where the share of certified installers is growing, and therefore they fear that they will lose some market shares. This is not really the type of behavior that I'm trying to look at. I'm really looking at those compliers who reacted to the policy. Yes.
So just so I understand, so the control group are other firms in the sort of like heat installing sector. So if I'm a household and I was going to get a gas boiler, but now there's a subsidy, so I'm going to get a heat pump, isn't the control group also affected by spillovers?
It's a very good question. Thanks a lot. So basically, these are local markets. So the identification strategy built on the idea that these are local markets where you don't have this type of contamination, and I will show you the difference between treated and controlled firms and their surrounding market. Right? No, actually, because this is if you look at the pre-treatment balance, you see that the treated establishment, 3,000 treated establishments compared to the 90,000 untreated establishments, you see that they are of the same size, basically same head count, same age. So these are really comparable firms. The main difference comes with the situation at the commuting zone level. You have a lower population for treated firms in the commuting zone, and also a higher reliance, on fuel oil heating. So basically, these are rural areas.
But surely some of them are still operating in the same markets. Wouldn't you have to, like, for each treated firm, have to construct a?
Yeah, it's true, and that's also why I need to rely on the parallel trend assumption to show that you actually have no treatment for the other group. Yeah, I mean, maybe we should discuss that later. But basically, the main idea is really to have population. Treated firms are on areas that are more rural. And you cannot really, this is the main driver, because this is the place where you really need to switch to a heat pump if you want to get rid of fuel oil boiler. Otherwise, if you have access to the gas network, you will always switch to the natural gas boiler, because this is cheaper. Yes, yeah.
I just want to clarify, the market that this opens them up, is it just residential installation? Yes. So and there's no substitute. So if you're a worker now, you can install heat pumps. Can you install heat pumps for firms as well?
You could as well. Yes.
So then the market that they get access to is not just residential. I could install.
True, but the subsidy is only for the residential sector.
Okay. But do you observe whether they also benefit from just being able to help other firms adopt the technology? And
you mean installing at firms?
Helping other firms.
No, I don't have that. I have to think about it.
Because I feel like there could be other policies targeting firms.
True. True. I think exactly on this time period, it was mostly dedicated to the residential sector, because I have data. I have data on the tertiary sector. So basically, all other buildings except residential. There have been such policy at the same time. Yes.
Maybe you were going to say it. Maybe I'm but this is an endogenous decision, right? From the perspective.
Yes.
So why are they choosing it more in the rural areas than
precisely because you cannot really. I mean, you need to have a market that is prone to adopting heat pumps, and in a very urban setting, you have a lot of multifamily dwellings. So you basically can switch easily to a heat pump. These are really heat pumps for single family dwellings. And same, again, this argument around the gas network. If you don't have the gas network, you cannot switch to a natural gas boiler, but gas boiler were still subsidized in France at the time. All right, so in terms of establishment level analysis, I will first start with the technology adoption, showing you that you have indeed a decrease in the share of natural gas boilers and an increase in the share of heat pumps for treated establishments and not for controlled establishments at the time of the adoption. Sorry. And then I also show you the effect for the employment policy, so basically hires and separations at the establishment level. I'm using this Callaway-Santana staggered definitive design, where I really use as the main identifying variation, the adoption of the certificate at the establishment level. So here's the result for the technology adoption. So you see on the left-hand side, a surge by 20 percentage points in the share of heat pumps among all works that are installed by treated firms, and you see a decline by almost 20% percentage points in the share of fossil fuel boilers. So there is really this substitution, technology switch. And now, looking at the effect on employment, you see that at the same time, for the same firms, you see an increase in the number of hires, but also an increase in the number of separations, which is still significant and still important, because we are talking about plus 1.5 workers out of a baseline of 6, but also plus 0.75 exits. So there is likely a story about winners here and losers there of the energy transition. Yes.
So was there any matching used in this case? Or?
Not here, no matching. Okay. Now, turning to the estimation strategy.
Can I ask you, why losers? Why do you say that are winners and losers?
Potential losers.
Okay.
If they leave and they never get another job somewhere else.
Okay. So watch out, I mean, here you say losers, I mean, it's not clear what they're doing after.
Exactly. So to answer this question, I need to take the worker perspective. And therefore, I use this matched employee data set. I apply this event study strategy with matching. I match workers within these triplets, gender, occupation, and industry, between firms that are treated and firms that are untreated. And I do this for incumbent workers, those workers that were already employed within a treated firm before adoption, and treated also the year of adoption, 2019. And there I can look at the effect of adoption for different margins, number of hours worked, earnings, and of course, hourly wage, which is just a ratio. And I can also do that for workers who leave, who separate. Maybe they are losers, but maybe not. I can also do that for workers who joined, the potential winners of the energy transition.
And you don't, sorry, you don't have scale or tenure or something that you can use to try and control for the. Yeah.
I have age for workers, but that's all I have. So for earnings, this is the result for incumbent workers. You are working in such a firm. The firm adopts a new technology, and suddenly you earn 15% more per year. So that's a strong increase. And of course, the question is whether this is driven by longer hours or higher hourly wage. So here is the answer. This is almost entirely driven by longer hours worked, and almost nothing is happening with hourly wage. So this is in line with on-the-job reskilling. That is, people need to work longer hours, and also you see that there is a declining pattern. So first you need to work a lot more, and then you only work slightly more. Then in terms of hourly wage, the pass-through, this seems to be a story about the retraining, reskilling costs passed through workers' wage. So really, if you are in such a situation, you cannot really earn a higher hourly wage. It's also in line with a monopolistic relationship. I'm talking already about the next slide, but this really looks like a monopolistic situation where basically employers can really pass through everything on on the hourly wage, and you see this flat wage, even if you actually had to incur some cost at the worker level, because you have to retrain. Yes, sorry, question.
Like if they're working longer hours, maybe I missed this, they don't get paid these longer hours, or
they get paid these longer hours through the labor earnings, annual earnings, yet they don't get any increase in the hourly rate, basically. So basically, it also means that there's no story about potential labor supply bottleneck. Otherwise, they would pay higher hourly rates.
Or market power.
Or market power, as I'm saying. So now the question: what happens to leavers and newcomers? So this is for leavers in red and newcomers in green. What you see first of all is an earning dip in the year where they move. Of course, they don't work for like half of the year on average. And then you see a rapid recovery for both leavers and newcomers. Yet for leavers, this is a striking pattern. If you leave, the outcome is labor earnings. So that's what you get in a year. You see that you recover even more than what you had before. And this is on average an increase by almost 35%. And for the number of hours worked, it's only 15%, in line with what you had for incumbent workers. However, for newcomers, they are almost on a flat. They recover. And now the question is whether there is a difference in the hourly wage. I think I had a question there.
The leavers, do you see whether they go to a different industry or?
I have that in two slides.
Oh, sorry.
So now coming to the hourly wage, just very quickly. So the striking pattern is really here. On this slide, you see an increase in the hourly wage only for leavers.
previous slide?
Sorry.
No, this is the previous. I'm just wondering about the newcomers. Why are they losing money when they join? Am I reading that?
I mean, this is very imprecise. I don't have as much newcomers as compared to leavers. I think Are you talking about this pattern here?
The dip, I'm talking about both the dip for leavers, which I understand because they're leaving and for a worse job.
They
For
won't.
newcomers, they're joining, so they should be earning more, hopefully.
No, I mean the newcomers they are exiting from a previous position and likely not working for some month in the year before they join.
I see, so it's mechanical because there's
So maybe
some
it's
lag.
mechanical. Yes, exactly. What's more interesting is really the fact that that they recover and some recover faster. Thanks. And they recover faster because leavers actually get a higher hourly wage when they exit their current match and kind of exit the monopolistic situation. This is not happening for newcomers. Newcomers are joining those firms that benefited from the policy. So this is again in line with reskilling happening on the job, people hired for general labor, and those workers benefiting through exiting. Yes.
I don't know whether you mentioned this. Why is one fixed at -1 and one fixed at -2?
This is precisely because of the previous question. You have an exit that the last year where everyone is working. I mean, when newcomers are working one full year is -2 compared to the entry year, which is 0. Because in -1 they might be. Actually, you see this already happening here. Yeah. They are already not working one complete year. That's why. Yes.
I'm just curious how you interpret this result. Like everybody gets reskilled, but you have to leave to get the wage gain.
Yes.
So I think that's like there's like sticky wages within firm, and so the firm's just like not updating wages to productivity, or like I'm just curious what your takeaway is.
That's exactly that. That one would not be surprising in the French context because this is a really sticky labor market. But this is even more interesting in this setting because we are subsidizing those firms with the aim to increase green jobs creations. Now the question on heterogeneity. Do effects vary by leavers' destination or newcomers' origin? So in terms of destination, leavers, once they are reskilled, they can go either to a heat pump certified or non-heat pump certified firm, and they still get this higher hourly rate. And I interpret this based on the fact that the skills that they got in their previous match are portable skills, not firm specific, but worker specific. Yes.
And what is like the range of industries that they go to in the graph on the right? Like what is what do they do when they're what are the?
Oh no, sorry. This is still within the heating sector. You remain within the heating sector, but given that the heat pump certificate also embeds some knowledge about refrigerant gases, etc. So you could use that for air cooling, for instance. And this is also a market that is growing in France because of the global warming. So I mean, this makes sense. However, for newcomers, you have a really this is almost. This is not significant because they have very few workers coming from outside of the industry. But if you actually come from within the industry, so basically doing the newcomers effects only with people that were coming from this industry, you still see something happening for the hourly wage. This is something like an 8.1 wage gain, half of the wage gain for leavers. So basically, if you have a smaller skill gap, you can actually get a higher green premium, if you like, even within those firms. So this basically means that if you have a smaller skill gap, you still benefit from the policy. So now coming to the conclusion, because I think I need to do so. Yes. First of all, I observe very, very few evidence of long-run earnings and employment losses. So basically, if we have this joint condition, subsidies on the demand side of the product market, triggering a sharp increase in the demand for green technologies, but we complement that with the training supply that was at scale at the time, you really have on-the-job reskilling that can smooth the transition costs. So basically, we can have situations where we actually reduce transition costs for workers in the energy transition. So, but we also observe this situation with monopolistic employers, wage compression, skilled workers need to separate if they want to get the reward on their skills. And this is actually, this might become a bottleneck as we want to scale up the energy transition, because we will need employers to invest in the reskilling of their employees, but they won't do it if they know that their own workers might be poached by other employers and eventually separate from the current match. So of course, this opens a lot of policy questions, including monopoly regulation in this specific industry, but also maybe updating skill contingent pay scales is the way to go, because right now the pay scales at the industry level do not include anything about these new green scales. Yes.
Time for questions.
Yeah, time.
No, there's time.
Oh,
Please go.
I have, it's such an interesting paper. I'm super interested for a couple things on these yellow boxes. Like, I don't quite understand the story where it's monopsony if you're showing that like the competitor firms are poaching really well. Like, doesn't it mean the buyer side of the labor market's kind of competitive? And then I guess my second question is like the regulation of the pay scales. Is there some regulation that prevents firms from giving raises? Like, I'm just trying to figure out what is the distortion that is causing firms to not just give a raise when their workers become so productive?
It's not a regulation per se, but it's more of a policy that they have, which is well known from the literature, like the industry literature. I know that they don't want to increase wages, also because they think there should be some hierarchy between employees and employers. And I mean, what they would say is, if you want a higher wage, just become an employer. That's really what the way that they are thinking.
But then it's like the firm, it like sucks for the firms. They train this worker up and then they go somewhere else and be productive.
I mean, you also have this literature on the type of skills that you have. Either it's firm specific or it's worker specific. They might want to specialize in a way that basically makes the skill firm specific, and therefore you cannot easily separate. This might be a bottleneck for the transition in the long run.
Super interesting.
All right. Thank you so much.